To call this regular council to meeting to order, and before we do so, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are situated, including those who are coming in on Zoom, is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live in this area and add to the richness of our community. Madam Clerk, the invocation, please. Do we rise since we're here? No? It's not working? I should say while we're waiting for the clerk that this is the first meeting where councillors have been in the council chambers. I'm no longer by myself. I do have to accommodate those around me. And we are experiencing some minor difficulties, but it's great to have councillors back in the council chambers. A couple of councillors are still zooming in, and we've got some staff members that are zooming in as well. There are only 3 here. Then please proceed, Madam Clerk, with the invocation.
Thank you. We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. And the roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
All members of council are present, your worship.
Thank you. So we have an addendum this evening. It's with respect to reports. And number 4 is CAO 20/LC 11-2021. Those are the minutes of the Land Committee for September the 9th, 2021. And those items are, that report is included in the consent agenda. I have a few announcements, and I want to start with National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. This year, for the first time, the federal government has designated September 30th as a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation to recognize the terrible legacy of residential schools in Canada. It is important that we all take the time to learn about and reflect on the unimaginable experiences of our Indigenous people as a result of the residential school system in our country. It is a tale of tragedy that lasted for well over a century. Children were forcibly taken from their families by government agents and the police. It was an offense for Indigenous people to protest against residential schools or to seek grievance against the government. Children suffered physical and emotional abuse. When parents persisted in protesting the abduction of their children, the government passed legislation prohibiting any Indigenous parent from interfering in the education of their child in residential schools. The government passed a law requiring Indigenous people to first obtain government permission to sue the government, and then required anyone wishing to represent Indigenous people in court to first obtain government permission. The new holiday fulfills one of the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, intended to honor survivors, families, and communities that suffered the residential experience, and to ensure that the legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. The town of Erie will be recognizing the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation by closing municipal offices and encouraging everyone to participate in the Orange Shirt campaign, supported by the Erie Native Friendship Center and the Erie Diversity and Inclusion Coalition. September 30th has been observed as an Orange Shirt Day across Canada since 2013 to commemorate the Indigenous children who were taken from their homes and placed in residential schools. The orange shirt represents the clothing that Phyllis Jack wore on the day that she was taken from her family at 6 years of age to attend a residential school. That orange shirt was taken from her, thus denying her the comfort of association with her own family. I encourage all residents to actively participate in the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation and to learn more about residential schools. reflect on how we can confront our past, atone for past injustices to our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and embrace the opportunity to include everyone in the life of our broader community. And I want to thank Anne Trudeau and Janine Tesmer for assisting me with respect to those remarks. I also wanted to comment about the Puerto Horticultural Society. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Puerto Horticultural Society. This past weekend, the Society held an open house at the Mill Greenhouse in town, providing the public with an opportunity to meet current members, peruse the history of the organization, and catch some gardening tips. And for those of us with not always green thumbs, this was a great opportunity to get some free professional advice. Over the 100 years, the Puerto Horticultural Society has provided its expertise to many local initiatives, and its members continue to offer their service to many current projects and activities. Congratulations on 100 years of service to our community. Then I wanted to comment very briefly on some of the new businesses in town. Throughout and despite the pandemic, intrepid individuals have embarked on exciting, challenging, and anxious commercial enterprises in our town. Over the past year, a surprising number of businesses have been started by entrepreneurs, young and old. Whether it is food, flowers, dry goods, services, or any combination, these individuals are to be admired, encouraged, and supported by our community. In just the past 2 months, I and members of council and economic development and tourism staff have attended a number of ribbon cuttings across town, recognizing and congratulating the new members of our business community. During this time of pandemic, when so many businesses have been under extreme strain, I ask all residents of Fort Erie to support our existing and new businesses. And then finally, I don't want to be taking any thunder from Regional Councillor Encina if he's able to make the meeting, but this past week, the Region's Corporate Services Committee supported a resolution to accept the tender bid of a company to construct the new Gilmore Lodge at the former County Fair Mall site. The decision has to be ratified still by Regional Council on Thursday evening this week, which, if forthcoming, should see construction commence on that new long-term care facility later this year. Those are my announcements, and I'll now go to declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I assume everyone can hear me. I have 4 this evening. The first one is PDS 79-2021. That's the Animal Control Services Agreement Report. As the company I work for has performed contracted services for the Fort Erie SPCA, who would likely be bidding to provide animal control services to the town. Bylaw 111-2021, that's to assume primary services in the Spears Road Estates subdivision Phase 1. As I live in Spears Estates, that is also applies to Bylaw 112-2021, which is to assume the secondary services in Spears Road Estates. And also Bylaw 114-2021, excuse me, that's to accept certain lots in Plan 59M 488 from Part Lot Control, Block 42, in the Peace Bridge Village subdivision, as I, at least for now, still live in a subdivision by Ashton Homes Western Limited that has not yet been transferred to the municipality, although it looks like that's going to happen this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. So, you said 111, 12, and 114?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, so we'll deal with those separately when we get there, and PDS 79, your declaration is noted. Any other declaration of pecuniary interest? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regard to notice of motion, your notice of motion, item C, although I've been told I'm not in conflict, I am going to err on the side of caution because my house is directly located in front of a stormwater management pond.
Okay.
Or behind, I should say.
Right, and so that is item 12C, did you say? Yes.
Yes.
Are there any others? Okay, then we have a notice of upcoming public meetings, a proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision for 3285 Thunder Bay Road. That will be held in the council chamber, well, will be in the council chambers. I guess it will be done by digital means. October the 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And the information report for that public meeting will be available on our website on September the 29th, 2021. Sorry, that's a public meeting. Yeah. Okay. Madam Clerk, have we heard from Regional Councillor Encina, or is he unable to make it this evening?
Not yet, Your Worship.
Okay, so if he does contact you, could you let me know, and then we can always ask him to provide his report when he arrives. So we have a presentation this evening, and that is Orma Bleeks, President of Advancing Crystal Beach, with respect to the transformation of Fire Station 6 into the Village Hall. So, Mr. Davis, could you arrange for Ms. Bleeks to appear magically on our screens? Good evening, Ms. Bleeks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our project.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Orma Bleeks, and I am the president of Advancing Crystal Beach. I have always felt that karma has been very good to Advancing Crystal Beach. When we started the farmers market in Crystal Beach, Joan Christensen came on board to write the $50,000 grant that we received from the Niagara Prosperity Initiative. When we looked at facilities in Crystal Beach for our community hub project, Jennifer Dockstader guided us through the process and, along with the beachcombers, supported the plan. Joan wrote the $75,000 grant that we received. As we became known on social media, other folks with talents have joined us. Heather Coupe has joined ACB, and guess what? She's a community development specialist who's had a 30-year career of helping community projects get started, leverage funding, and operate not-for-profit centers. I'm wondering, are you seeing the slides that we sent in?
We don't have them yet, so you're trying to share your screen, is that what you're doing?
As I understood it, we sent in the slides so they would be available to you.
Okay, so we did get those by email. I don't know whether, Mr. Davis, do you have those, or Ms. Tesmer?
I sent them in to Janine.
Okay, so, all right, I know that they came in by mail, and I did have a chance to look at them, actually. So, if other members of council have their mail, that came in,
Actually, I believe I sent them to Ashley Carter. That's who I was instructed to send them to, as well as Ms. Kelly.
and was that last Friday?
No, that was today.
Okay, there's your, yeah, so there's the issue then, because Ashley's not in right now. However, pardon? Oh, they're in the agenda, okay. Under the, okay. I knew I'd read them someplace. So this would be at Ms. Bleek's presentation? No. Okay. Yep. Mr. Davis is going to try to put these up on the screen, Ms. Bleeks.
Thank you.
Known to me as Orma when we're not in a formal situation. Yeah, so the email for any member of council that wants to look it up, it came from Jeffrey Aldridge to us, and it was at 12:59 a.m. this morning.
No, it came in from,
Here we go.
that's it. That's it.
Okay, please proceed.
Slide 2, please. Where do you go back? I don't believe that's the right one. No.
So which
Oh,
one is it that you wanted to
okay.
put up?
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, you got it. There we go. I'll just
So-
move down.
Go down to, oops,
Hang on.
okay, yeah.
There you go.
Okay. In both the initial survey of Fort Erie residents and with our more recent change.org petition, over 400 residents have shown their support for the creation of a neighborhood center. Over 100 people also left their contact info to help us with fundraising, to donate to the center, and to volunteer their time once the center is open. Next slide, please. ACB has been working on bringing a neighborhood center to Fort Erie since 2017. We have put together a business plan and a sustainability plan as requested by Town Council. We are now delayed by the Ontario Ombudsman complaint. We have until spring of 2022 to raise $1 million, and every week and every day of delay makes that more challenging. We feel the operation would be self-sustaining, and the purchase will be as a result of donations with no drain on town taxpayers. Next slide, please. In researching other community hub models, we discovered other regions have dynamic and successful neighborhood centers, such as Peel, Alton, Toronto, and Hamilton-Wentworth. There is no such center in all of Niagara. Fort Erie could lead the way in creating a neighborhood center for the benefit of all residents. This could also be a model for future neighborhood centers in Niagara. Next slide, please. A neighborhood center is a not-for-profit, safe, barrier-free, inclusive place created by the community for the community, where residents belong, families are made strong, and neighbors care about one another. The benefits of a neighborhood center will be to help combat loneliness, especially for seniors and youth, reduce COVID-19 impacts, and is primarily a fun activity center for all. It will be self-sustaining and will not rely on taxpayer dollars. Next slide, please. ACB has already facilitated some of these organizations in providing services at the Crystal Ridge Community Church in Crystal Beach. Unfortunately, space is limited there and only available 1 day per week. We have created a private space in the Village Hall to accommodate community service organizations. We have received letters of support from United Way Niagara, Bridges Community Health Center, and Community Living Fort Erie for this purpose. Next slide, please. Fort Erie residents responded overwhelmingly positively about our big idea. Here are some of the things that they told us. Our community is growing and needs more community space that preserves the history and overall vibe of our village. Crystal Beach would benefit by having a public facility for all to use, while at the same time preserving this part of history. I feel strongly that ACB is the organization to put that fire hall to the best use. Next slide, sorry. ACB conducted an environmental scan of West Fort Erie, and it showed a true lack of activities for residents. Residents in our online survey suggested more than 17 activities they would like to see in the Village Hall to participate in. Now, the next two slides demonstrate all the activities that people would like to see happening here in a neighborhood center. Oh, next slide, please. Fitness for all ages topped the list of requested activities. However, these slides demonstrate the wide range of interests and fun activities that people would like and are not available elsewhere or are overbooked. For example, Beachcomber's Dart program has a wait list to join a team. The Ridgeway Legion has a pool table. However, it is located in their bar and not appropriate for teens. We feel we can offer intergenerational connections where seniors can pass on their talents, knowledge, and skills to the younger generation, whereas younger people can have older adults with computers and technology. And the next slide is the rest of the activities that people requested. Once we started developing a schedule of activities for the neighborhood center, we were amazed at how many the village hall could accommodate with the 2 large rooms. The scheduling of activities was put together and reviewed by recreational therapists who could identify times required based on their previous experience. I don't know if you want to look at that slide a little longer and the one before it. Okay, next slide, please. Residents have indicated their support for keeping the building in order to honor the firefighters that have contributed so much to this community. The Village Hall would also display memorabilia of Crystal Beach, for which dozens of people have already offered to contribute. We want to retain the memory of the village, which just reached its 100th anniversary. Next slide, please. Advancing Crystal Beach has had a real estate appraisal of Fire Station 6 for approximately $750,000, depending on the market. We anticipate over $100,000 in annual revenues to support the operation of the Village Hall. Please see our business and sustainability plan for details. Next slide, please. We need to raise the funds to purchase Fire Station 6 by spring 2022. We need the support of the town of Fort Erie to pursue this goal for the benefit of all Fort Erie residents. In our proposal of July 9, 2021, we requested the agreement of council to negotiate a fixed price by the end of August in order to fundraise and inform donors of the purchase price and other estimated costs. It is now mid-September, and with the Ombudsman complaint, this delay makes it more difficult to enlist the support of major donors. We have retained an experienced fundraising chairperson who is chomping at the bit to approach his known givers with a concrete plan. It is essential at this time to reach an agreement on the purchase price as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Any questions any concerns?
Thank you very much, Ms. Bleeks. Are there any members of council that have any questions of the delegation? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to Mrs. Bleeks. Orma, thank you for your enthusiasm and all the work you've put into it. I do have a few questions. One is under, and there's a lot of slides here. In the sustainability or the business plan, you put down insurance $5,000 a year. Does that $5,000 include the insurance for the building itself or just for the activities and liability?
Jeffrey Aldridge, our vice president, accessed that information, and I believe it was liability and the building as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Redekop. In regards to the cost for the renovations, you have down here $100,000, but what about the repairs? And I understand that you were provided with I guess it's called a feasibility in regards to the costs outlined in regards to the needed repairs to the building. Has that been taken into consideration?
Yes, I believe the building assessment report of 2018 was $453,000 over a 20-year period. So we've written in basically $20,000 a year into our costs to cover those costs, to cover those maintenance, repairs, whatever they may be.
In that report that you received, did it say anything that was more urgent than others? Like, I understand your logic there, about 20,000 a year to eventually meet the cost of 453,000. But are there not maintenance and repairs that are needed immediately to maintain the building?
Ms.
Or else it's
Bleaks?
just gonna further deteriorate?
Well, I would assume that it was written in 2018. I would assume that the town probably covered any of the things that should have been done so that the firemen were safe in their building. As far as I could see, and from the report that came in, there was nothing extremely pressing. There was one small joint which had some kind of asbestos tape on it, but otherwise there was no concerns about asbestos. Everything was seen to be in general good repair. I believe town staff have looked after the building well.
Okay, thank you for that. The last thing, I think I would be remiss when I don't bring up the Black Creek Community Center, in that it actually is a neighborhood center, and it actually does provide, when you hit your definition, you're basically describing the Black Creek Community Center. Are you aware of all the things that go on at the Black Creek Community Center?
We weren't able to find any information about what was going on there. I know I've been there for rummage sales and sort of activities, vendors were there, but I wasn't able to find any information about, any of the activities that we would like to do in the village hall. That kind of information didn't seem to be easily available.
And I don't disagree with you. I looked online myself today, but there are a fair amount of regular activities there, particularly the Navy League, the Brownies, the Cubs, and there's other events. I know at one point there was, you could take dance lessons, you could take aerobic lessons. It all depends if there was a instructor that was willing to come. But anyway, thank you for your presentation.
Anything further,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Noyes?
Nothing further.
Any other members of council? Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask for clarification on one thing. In your presentation, Irma, you mentioned that you would like to have a set price given to you so that you can initiate the fundraising to accomplish that. But then you mentioned a deadline of April. Are you saying that if you don't fundraise and raise enough capital by April of next year, then you would abandon that project?
Well, I can't see that we could go forward, but we can't go forward until we have a set price, because we just look silly to any major donor saying, well, we don't know what we're going to have to pay for it, but we hope. So this is our pressing need at this point. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm from the community. So we're not really going to go down without a battle.
Yeah, you've done really well. And it's very impressive what you've been able to accomplish. Thank you, Your Worship. That was the only question that I had.
Very much, Councillor Butler. Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Ms. Bleaks, and we appreciate the predicament that you're in, and we'll have to figure out how we can move this forward with the ombudsman still in the picture. But I'll have some further discussions with the CAO and the clerk to see what council might be able to do in the interim. Thank you very much for your enthusiasm, certainly, and for your commitment to our community. You and your
Thank you very
colleagues.
much.
Okay, so then that takes us to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? I would like, Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution, but I would like item 9.2.2E, which is correspondence from the City of Welland regarding the existing grants and incentive programs that are offered by the region with respect to development. So 9.2.2E,
And 9,
at the bottom of the second page.
the nursing shortage?
Sorry, it's E, sorry, D. Yeah, sorry, thank you, it's D.
This one?
Nine point two D.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Your Worship, I do have that now.
thank you. You may proceed.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow, the council approves the consent agenda items with the exception of E,
9.2.2D.
9.2.2D.
Correct.
As recommended.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just a question on the E that follows your D. In the regards to support the City of St. Catharines' request for Government of Ontario to create a comprehensive marine strategy. I'm just wondering how this may affect our pursuit for our Marina project here in Fort Erie.
Well, I don't know what the impacts would be. I hadn't contemplated that there would necessarily be any, but certainly if we're talking about marine sustainability, any project in the town of Fort Erie should at least be of a sustainable nature and one that doesn't cause any damage to the environment in the long run. So I hadn't considered that a marina project or any other project on the lake or river would be an impediment. That's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
You're always asking very good questions. Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
Nothing further.
Any other councillors? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of the one item? That is unanimous. And Councillor Noyes, I wonder if I could get you to read the motion to deal with item 9.2.2D.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow. The council approves the consent items 9.2D.
9.2.2D. Okay, that matter's on the floor. Are there any questions or comments? Maybe I can just give a little bit of background, and maybe Councillor Dubanow, I can hand the chair to you, just give some background on this. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Your Worship.
So this correspondence from the City of Welland comes among a lot of discussion and a number of meetings that have been dealing with the tax incentive, development charge incentive, and Smart Niagara incentive programs that the region is proposing to eliminate in favor of a new set of incentive programs which would focus on 4 prime areas. That would be affordable housing, brownfields, employment lands, and public realm. Recently, the Regional Council passed a resolution permitting the existing programs to remain in effect until such time as staff brings forward incentive programs within those 4 headings that would be focused on the community improvement program areas within each community. So essentially, in Fort Erie, it would be the downtown core areas, or it could be whatever areas are identified as community improvement program areas in the town. So I'm giving you all this background to a very confusing and complicated issue, but one that is of some significance, because I think the proper way to deal with this resolution would be to receive it as opposed to support it, simply because this is a moving target. City of Welland and 1 or 2 other municipalities have a view. Many of the other municipalities have a differing view, but suffice to say that the majority of council has opted to extend the existing programs until such time as programs can be brought forward that will fit into those four categories and be within CIP areas, which typically are not greenfield developments. And that's one of the things that is of concern, that we should be focusing on brownfield, we should be focusing on density, we should be focusing on those four target areas. So I would like to move that we amend the direction on this to receive, as opposed to receive and support. And I would need a seconder on that, Chair.
Yes, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Noyes? So the amendment is now on the floor for any questions or comments from council. I think the mayor gave a good explanation, in my opinion, anyway. Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm not too sure as to whether I might be out of order with the question, but I'm just curious as to if this is something that was already passed by regional council. Wouldn't the city of Welland be, wouldn't it be more proper if the city of Welland requested that the regional council reconsidered? I'm confused as to why what's getting to us now, there should be a reconsideration motion at the region.
Yeah, Councillor Lubberts, I think his worship has an answer to that.
Yeah, so if you'll note, this correspondence came August the 10th, and the region has dealt with this in committee since then. What's today, September the 20th? Early September, I'm thinking maybe within the last couple of weeks, regional council did deal with this type of issue, which kind of goes to the target of this resolution from the city of Welland. So to some extent, it's been partially addressed, subject to further comment from and program recommendations from regional staff. So the answer is, this was dated August the 12th, didn't anticipate what was going to happen at the region, and hence, as I say, I think receive is more appropriate than receive and support.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? Questions or comments regarding the amendment? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? So that's unanimous. And we'll now return to the motion as amended. Bear with me, guys. It's been a long time since I've been in these chambers. So now the item as amended is now on the floor for any questions or comments from council. All right, seeing none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous, and I'm happy to pass the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dubanow. And that takes us then to the next segment of the agenda, which is reports. And the first report that we have to deal with is a report that was previously moved by Councillor Butler. That is PDS 79-2021. That is on the floor then, and Councillor Butler, I believe this was adjourned last month. There were some questions that you were formulating and some, you wanted to have an opportunity to further review this. So I will give the floor to you right off the bat.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I did have some questions, and they were answered by Ms. Dolch. I do have some additional questions that she and I had discussed, and one of the questions was with respect to the salaries and how they came up with such a high number for internal salaries if we were to bring it in-house.
And Ms. Dolch, were you able to provide some background on that?
Yes, Your Worship, and through you to the councillor. Generally, what we looked at was a salary range of our band 4 at the bottom level, and with benefits for 2 positions came out to about the 175 that you see there. So it was just based on our current rate that we pay the bylaw officers currently, one of the bylaw officers currently, and we just use that and times it by 2.
Councillor Butler?
Yes, Your Worship, I appreciate that answer. In doing some calculations myself with respect to salaries and what that would entail, in speaking to one of the other humane societies, that based on the level of wages that they can expect to dish out to enforcement officers, they would be looking at close to $50,000 plus their burden rate. So it is probably $25,000 less expensive per enforcement officer on the basis of two to go with an outside entity. So I appreciate that. But Your Worship, I do have one last question,
Yes.
and that would be pertaining to there is no mention in the contract with respect to code of conduct and customer service. And I think that that's really an important aspect on how they represent the town of Fort Erie, because they're basically ambassadors and representing us in a manner that I'm hoping we have something in place that would dictate how they interact with the general public when they're issuing tickets or trying to resolve situations.
Thank you. I think I'm going to go to the CAO on that. Ms. Dolce, if you don't mind.
Through your worship to the councillor, yes, we can make that part of the RFP. They'll follow our policies when it comes to customer service. As you know, we have very stringent customer service policies, as well as interaction with the public. So we will definitely include that in the RFP.
Mr. Butler?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't have any further questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Noyes, you had raised a point earlier. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that right now.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Yes, going over it, I didn't see where there was a requirement that there be a physical presence in Fort Erie. I see that in one of the scenarios where the town basically provides the bylaw enforcement end of it, that it talks about utilizing the shelter services in Fort Erie. But if it's another SPCA service, is there not going to be a requirement they actually have a physical location here in Fort Erie?
So, Mr. Cook, is that you, or should I go to Ms. Dolce? Ms. Dolce?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the councillor. So in terms of the other party that we spoke with, what would happen in that scenario? They have truck services. They come and they have officers on call at all times, and they provide pickup for situations that they need to, and they take them back to their other facility. And it's about 15 minutes down the road is where they would bring them. And they do a similar service in other municipalities. They do the pickup service and enforcement service that way.
Okay, so I think the answer is there wouldn't necessarily be a presence right within the community, other than to provide the service that the contract reflects?
That's correct. There would be a physical building for sheltering them here in Fort Erie.
Councillor Noyes, anything further?
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment that I would hate to see us lose the physical presence of the SPCA in Fort Erie. Myself, I guess the other question is for the enforcement end of it, the animal control end of it. The understanding, would that be 24/7? Or would that, like we're talking about 2 officers, I understand, would that be providing services 24/7, 7 days a week?
Ms. Dolce?
Through you to the councillor, that's correct. We would provide that same level of service,
Councillor Noyes?
24 hours, 7 days.
Yep, anything further?
Yeah, just in regards to how can 2 officers provide 24/7 services? 7 days a week.
Ms. Dolce?
Through you to the councillor, we would have rotating schedules with our other officers as well. That's the only way we could do it, but we'd have to provide the similar service.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, but I guess I was going more towards the Niagara Falls and SPCA services that I think Councillor Butler talked about, that they were pricing it on 2 officers.
Okay. Yeah, so is there a question in there?
I'm just wondering, would that also pertain if it's somebody else beside Fort Erie, if it was another outside agency, would they also be providing 24/7 services and only require 2 officers to provide that service?
I presume that's what the RFP is going to be requesting, Ms. Dolch? 24/7 service?
Through you to the counselor, that's correct. It's an on-call service, so it's just an on-call service.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Any other counselors? If not, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations? And these were modified, as you know, by an amendment from Councillor Zanko, I believe. All those in favor, raise your hands. Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Mcdonald Drive street lighting, and that was moved previously by Councillor Lubberts, so that's on the floor. Anyone wish to speak to that? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to thank our director, Mr. Walsh, with respect to the comments given to us and further comments made about GAMS. Here's my thing. I guess we can put this on a billboard. They're taxpayers, and in my opinion, if we're going to be paying, roughly $300 per light to remove the lights on McDonald Drive, I would assume, and the director could correct me if I'm wrong, that there would be a little bit of detailed responsibilities that they would have to do as well. So would they not have to ground the pole and remove the current wiring as well? So that would add to it. Would they also have to get an ESA permit to do the work to remove it? So those are some of the things that I'm looking at. And in my estimation, I think it's fair to say that if we're going to spend money to dismantle it, why not then just give them a one-time fee based on what their estimate was of $8,000, and anything above and beyond that would be the responsibility of the neighborhood.
Mr. Walsh.
So with respect to the first couple of comments, grounding and such, you don't have to change the wiring to remove anything. You do have to take normal safety precautions, and a permit is not required in that case. You only need permits for new installations or replacement installations in this case.
Your Worship, I appreciate those comments. I am going to give a notice of motion that we support the residents of McDonald Drive and give them a one-time fee to correct the lighting situation on their street. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak to this? Mr. Walsh, I've got a few questions with respect to this. We have a street lighting policy, is that correct?
We do.
And that street lighting policy divides the residents of the town in terms of street lighting purposes between inside the urban boundary and outside the urban boundary, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Do you know offhand what the policy is with respect to street light placement within the urban boundary?
Within the urban boundary, there's a number of criteria we look into, but essentially it works out to about every other pole.
Within the urban boundary?
Within the urban boundary.
And are those poles placed on public property?
Yes, they are.
Within the public traveled road allowance?
That's correct.
And what about outside the urban boundary? What's the policy with respect to locating street lights outside the urban boundary?
Outside the urban boundary, we don't have as strict as a regiment for placing. Outside the urban boundary in the rural areas, it accounts to a street light at intersections.
And where are those street lights located vis-a-vis public or private property?
Again, they'd be on public property. The town doesn't own many poles themselves, so they're placed on Canadian Niagara or Bell Canada poles, whatever's closest to the intersection.
And if somebody in town, inside the urban boundary or outside the urban boundary, wants a street light erected, is there a policy that the municipality looks to determine whether or not a new street light should be put up?
There is a process we go through. It's spelled out in the policy itself as to fiscal responsibility and actual need for the light itself.
And are there circumstances where residents have to pay a portion or all of the cost of putting up a street light on?
There are circumstances for both partial and all.
And those would be street lights placed on public traveled road allowance.
That's correct.
This property on Mcdonald Drive that we're talking about, do you know if that's inside or outside the urban boundary?
It is outside of the urban boundary.
And we know that Mcdonald Drive, I believe, is a private road.
Yes, it is private.
Anybody declared a conflict with respect to this? Do you mind taking the chair?
I'd be happy to take the chair, Your Worship.
Okay, I'm reluctant to vociferously take an opposite position to a councillor with respect to this issue, but I have to do that here because I truly believe that this is the recommendation on this report from the staff. I think is an effort to try to accommodate something, but I think it's bad policy. I think it'd be bad policy if we were to provide a one-time grant in anticipation of your motion, Councillor Butler, to people who live on a private roadway for a number of reasons. The first is that these people live on a private road and they should be aware of what services are available to them or not. Everybody that lives in the town of Fort Erie that owns property pays taxes, and many people live on roads in this municipality that don't have street lights, period. And they pay taxes. Many people don't have sidewalks. They may not have storm drains. They may not have street lights. There may be other things that they don't have. There are some things that other people have and they don't have. So that the idea that we would provide funding to residents who live on a private road, completely contrary to the town's street lighting policy, seems to me not a good decision in terms of how we would manage this in terms of other private roads in the municipality, including some areas that are developed and within the urban boundary, but are gated communities. At what point do we say to those people, well, you know, yes, you're a taxpayer, it's not a public road, but okay, we did this for somebody else, so we're going to do it for you. I just don't think that it makes any sense. And in effect, if we were to fund this, we would be placing the residents on McDonald Drive in a superior position with a higher level of service to other people who live outside the urban boundary. And in some respects, maybe even people who do live within the boundary. So I'm sorry, Councillor Butler, but I can't support this resolution, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any other members of council have questions or comments? Councillor McDermott?
I tend to agree with the mayor on this a bit. I've been struggling with it myself because as councillors, you know, despite where people live, when they have complaints or needs that have to be taken care of, they come to their councillor, and the councillors try to assist them in getting what they want, and Councillor Butler's doing just that. I think the big thing for me is that if the town has set a precedent by providing power, we were paying for the power right along. I'd be a a little more concerned about saying no. But it's truly a mystery of life on how convoluted some of the things that go on here and with the CMP. It's been kind of the strangest thing I've ever seen. We understand that we haven't been paying for the power. We understand that the homeowners apparently haven't been paying for that power. We understand by what we've read here that CMP knows who's been paying for the power but can't divulge it because of privacy concerns. So I find that a little bit difficult to take because it's hard to take one person's word over the municipality's word when we really don't know how this got lost in the vortex of whatever that's gone through here. So, you know, I'm going to have to vote against this myself, but it's not really the ideal situation when we really, since 2013, this has been going on, like as far as the changeover. How we don't know or how CMP cannot tell us is kind of, to me, it's a little bit ridiculous because it would make it so much easier for councilors to make a decision based on, you know, who's been doing what, but we don't know. You know, the neighbors have an idea that it's us. We say it's not. CMP says it's not us. So I have to go with what I'm being told. But somewhere down the line, somebody knows something, and they're not sharing it with us. And I believe CMP is quite a big company. They should have an immaculate type of record-keeping thing. You think we would know exactly what is happening here. So I won't be supporting this this item here. It's I appreciate what Mr. Walsh has done. I know he's trying to help, but you know, this is just one of these situations that it's like a bad mystery because as councilors, you know, we really should know exactly what's happening here, and we don't. And it's not, I'm not blaming anybody for it. I'm just saying that somewhere down the line, it's got caught in a vortex, and these people are pretty much going to have to put up with that. I also understand that, you know, it would open the door for other areas. I mean, there are areas in Point Avenue past the gate that are private roads that don't get this type of service. I believe Black Creek Leisure Homes don't have this service. You know, there are a number of these groups that don't, and I think it would also open the door for some amount of hurt on the municipality. And I think that we're here to help citizens, but we're also here to protect the municipality. And I found this one of the most perplexing things, and something that should be a simple answer turns out not to be. And it's just one of those things, and I really don't feel good about even voting no on this. But at this point, I pretty much have to. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Councillor Butler, I did see your hand up. I'll go, okay, I'm just checking to see if any other councillors, Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question through you to Mr. Walsh. And it's possible that I misunderstood, but I was under the impression that if the town of Fort Erie doesn't remove the existing Cobra headlights, that the residents will not be in a position to replace the lights themselves. I know there was some confusion as to ownership. Originally, they approached CNP hoping to replace them. But again, I was under the impression that only the town could remove them and then they could replace them. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand?
Mr. Walsh?
For you, Councillor, to Councillor Zanko. CNP did make that statement back in April or May when we were discussing this. That was a verbal statement from one of their supervisors to me. I'm sure if the citizens approached CNP to enter into an agreement to upgrade the lighting or replace the lighting, and they came up with a comprehensive plan and agreed to it, that a suitable contractor could be hired by CNP to remove them.
Councillor Zanko?
Okay, so CNP did make that verbal statement. So if that is the case and CNP, you know, based on their verbal statement, that's correct, the McDonald Drive residents will just be left with a bunch of lights that don't work and no one will be able to replace them. This is the way I'm understanding it. So I'm inclined to support this motion, not necessarily to replace the lights, but I think Mr. Walsh found kind of a balance that will allow these residents to move forward on replacement. Otherwise, they're just going to be stuck with, you know, no lighting. And I mean, I know they have a few lights that work now, but eventually they're just going to be stuck with a bunch of lights that don't work. So that's just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. Before I go to Councillor Butler, any other councillors have questions, comments? Councillor Butler, back to you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate everybody's comments and their opinions with respect to the matter, and I understand them wholeheartedly. In my opinion, I just feel that if we're going to pay to take them down, why don't we just pay to have them replaced? So I kind of get lost in that argument of we shouldn't be doing anything because it's a private road and it should be the responsibilities of the residents. And to Councillor Zanko's point, I see that the director, Mr. Walsh, is trying to find a happy medium, but why not make that happy medium of the monetary value to replace the lights as opposed to take them down? I wonder if I could just get comment on that part.
Mr. Walsh?
I'm sorry, Councillor Thompson. I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to comment on here.
So to Councillor Zanko's point that you found a medium point to pay on a private road to remove the lights, why not, instead of remove the lights, assist in replacing those lights?
So through you, Councillor Dubanow, I think my report outlines exactly why we shouldn't. I think it implies a sense of responsibility for future maintenance and such, liability against the town, which I don't think we should be putting ourselves in, as this is private property. It's really no different than the town going into somebody's backyard and erecting a street light. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, no, and I get that. So I just need to ask, why then are we going on private party or property, not a party, private property to remove them? Right? Is it not the same thing? Maybe I can get someone to clarify that. I don't know.
Mr. Walsh, do you want to take that?
Well, in this case, as Councillor Zanko pointed out, we do have that verbal statement from CNP that we have to remove them. But I also believe that if we gave CNP permission with a suitable plan in place, they could remove them with their contractor.
Councillor Butler?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. I'm just wanting some clarification. If the motion that's before us is defeated, the town is not going to put any money towards this, whether to remove them or to replace them. Am I correct on that?
I believe that's correct. Perhaps, yeah. Okay, that's my understanding. I was just wondering if someone else wanted to verify that, but that's my understanding, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, because that's when I'm reading that if this is defeated, then we're not talking about in the past, the $10,000 that we're talking about to remove them. So if this is defeated, then that 10,000 is no longer on the table. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Your Worship.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think a far preferable approach for us to take would be to have our staff dialogue with CMP to try to get them to cooperate and work with the residents, as opposed to make their statements that they won't divulge this information, they won't give anybody that, maybe we won't do this, maybe you can't do that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. At some point, somebody obtained the approval of Canadian Niagara Power to put up light poles with lights. And who knows how long ago that was, but we know it had to be Canadian Niagara Power because they've provided the electricity on our streets for over 100 years. So I think the far preferable approach would be that, because, and I don't want to turn this into a gigantic snowball, but you know, they also pay taxes, but we don't plow their road. We don't maintain their road. They do. And you know, when they bought these properties, they knew that they were living there. It's the same with me. I know that I'm not going to get a sidewalk, and some of us who live in rural areas, we know we're not going to get sidewalks. That's part of where we are. So I would think a better process for us to follow would be to provide assistance to these residents in dealing with a large entity that we have a lot of dealings with ourselves. And so I'm quite happy to get involved in that process as well. But it seems to me that that would be the most logical and the soundest policy for us to adopt, in my view. And again, with all due respect, Councillor Butler, I know that you and all the members of council really go out of your way to try to support your residents, and I think that's admirable. That's your job, and I don't take issue with that whatsoever.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any other questions, comments from council? Okay, I'll go back to councillors. Councillor Zanko?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I wanted to make a comment. If this is defeated tonight, I do hope that Mr. Walsh can work with Niagara Power, because again, you know what, I just feel for these residents. I feel that they're stuck right now, and they have no other option because CNP has said that. So if this is defeated, and it sounds like that might be the tone, I'm really hopeful that staff will continue to try to help these residents.
Thank you,
And
Councillor.
nothing further.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Zanko. Okay. Councillor Lubberts, you didn't have any comment? Okay. So in that case, I'm going to call the question, and I have a feeling it's going to be a split vote, so I'm just going to ask everyone to raise their hand up until I acknowledge. I just want to make sure I get it counted correctly. All those in favor? Opposed? So that's defeated. I hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Walsh, I think we should be discussing this matter and try to make an approach to Canadian Niagara Power to see if we can't move some roadblocks here for the residents. Okay, that takes us then to the next item on the agenda, which is the financial report. And that would be Councillor McDermott. You have that resolution?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler. That CS 11 2021 second quarter financial, that council receives report number CS 11 2021 regarding the 2021 second quarter financial report, including COVID-19 financial impacts for information purposes.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. Any questions or comments? Mr. Jansen, I think you should pass on to your staff that they provide us with excellent reports. I know that a couple of meetings ago, maybe last week, there was another excellent financial report that we received, and your staff does an excellent job. If there are no questions or comments, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That is carried. That takes Vaccine Administration Policy Information Report, and Councillor Butler, you have that resolution. Resolution number 4.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that CAO-21-2021 COVID-19 Vaccination Administration Policy Directive and Procedure that council receives report number CAO-21-2021 for information purposes.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just bear with me here for a moment. I'm not looking to, obviously this is an information report, so any comments or anything that happens now isn't going to change anything, and I understand that this is a directive handed down by the province as well. So I mean, a lot of this is kind of outside of the hands at our local level here. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm fully vaccinated. I had my first shot back in April. I had my second back in June, and I was very happy to do that. You know, I made the choice. I felt it was the best choice for me, and I made that decision, and I have no regrets. I'm deeply, deeply concerned with the direction where this is going. The idea of mandates. You know, when we're talking vaccination, and it's something that's important, it's something we should promote, it's something we should talk about, it's something we should, you know, discuss the benefits. I'm very concerned where we start denying you know, the ability to participate in certain things, where employment, you know, we start using that. And the concern comes from that, you know, I think of my father. He was a refugee who came from, you know, not a very nice country, Eastern European family. There's a doctor up in Mississauga. His name is Suman Chakrabarti. I hope I pronounced his name right. He said some of the most hesitant individuals in our community are actually Eastern Europeans. And Imperial College actually did a study recently. It was released back in early September that said when you start implementing mandates, instead of being able to educate individuals on why vaccination is important and why they should do it, you end up digging their heels in and you make them more hesitant. So these are just my comments. I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I fully understand that there's a wealth of different attitude and opinion here, and I get that, and I'm good with it. It's just with this here, I wanted the opportunity to state that. I appreciate council's indulgence to say that, and thank you, Your Worship, for giving me that moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite appropriate, and I think that frequently those who are on the bubble maybe can be persuaded as opposed to forced. The challenge becomes those who aren't on the bubble, and that's the challenge that we're all faced with. And the reality is that many people will not fully, in my view, participate in society if they think it's not safe, and that's one of the challenges. Although there are many. Any other members of council want to say anything? If not, then I'm going to call the question. This is an information report. All those in favor? Opposed? Noted. That then takes us to response to inquiry, and there is one, Mr. Walsh, I believe this is yours, to Councillor Zanko, or is it?
Yes, it is. Thank you. At the August 23rd council meeting, Councillor Zanko inquired about the status of the decorative streetlight replacements, in particular Celebration Drive. The previously known decorative streetlights, including Celebration Drive, have been examined and the parts have been ordered. Parts are expected for delivery on or before September 21st, tomorrow, with installation to follow in 2 weeks following. Staff have also discovered 6 other decorative fixtures throughout town with issues and are in the process of diagnosing and ordering parts for those.
Mr. Walsh, before I go to Councillor Zanko, did the resident who had raised this with us, was he notified, do you know?
Not to my knowledge, but he may have been.
Okay, that if not, then my suggestion is that he be notified. Councillor Zanko, did you have any comments on this?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And to answer your question, the resident was notified. I did notify the resident myself. But through you to Mr. Walsh, considering it is September 20th, did we receive the parts yet?
Mr. Walsh?
Uh,
I think
Tomorrow is the deadline, and I don't know if the parts have come in.
Okay.
So I may be speaking out of turn, but I thought that they maybe did come in. I thought that one of the staff members indicated to me at the end of last week that they had come in, although maybe I was overly optimistic. Maybe he was saying that they were coming in, and I conflated that to mean they were here. So let's wait until Mr. Walsh can clarify that.
I'll find
Yes,
out.
and further, Your Worship, if through you to Mr. Walsh, if you could just let me know if there will be another delay, I think the resident would appreciate that, just because it does note on or before. So I realize tomorrow's the deadline, but it would be helpful if we could get an update.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh, the other thing is, my understanding is that we are now going to have easier access to these types of luminaires as we go forward, so that when they are out, we'll have an available stock.
The decorative are a special beast. They're a little more difficult to find parts for or get parts for. The more common Cobra head, we do have a stock at our work share at the Gibson Center of all of our wattages that we can replace as soon as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions with respect to this response to inquiry? If not, then the next resolution, Councillor Noyes, under new business, relates to the September 30th National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. Proclamation September 30th as National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released its final report on June 2nd, 2015, which included 94 calls to action to redress the legacy of residential schools and advance the process of Canadian reconciliation. And whereas the recent discoveries of remains and unmarked graves across Canada have led to increased calls excuse me, for all levels of government to address the recommendations in the TRC's call to action. And whereas all Canadians and all orders of government have a role to play in reconciliation. And whereas recommendation number 80 of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission called upon the federal government in collaboration with Aboriginal peoples to establish as a statutory holiday a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation to ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. And whereas the federal government has announced September 30th, 2021 as the first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, in brackets, National Orange Shirt Day, and a statutory holiday. Now therefore it be resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie does hereby commit to recognizing September 30th, 2021 as a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, in brackets, National Orange Shirt Day, by recognizing September 30th as a holiday for town employees and by sharing the stories of residential school survivors, their families, and communities.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? None, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the next resolution, Councillor Dubanow, relative to the Crystal Beach BIA.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes. That council accepts the resignation of Carol McKay from the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Area Board of Management, and further, that council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Dubanow, you have the next resolution.
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council appoints Chris Hawkswell to the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the period ending November 14, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. It's a little more trickier to pick out all the people that are voting, isn't it? Okay. Councillor Butler, you have the next resolution.
I do, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that notice of resignation of Affordable Housing Committee Christopher M. Nutt, that council accepts the resignation of Christopher M. Nutt from the Affordable Housing Committee, and further that council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Are there any other items of new business or inquiry? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I have another
Sorry,
resolution.
Councillor Dubanow, you have another one, that's right. Okay, this is separate, this is the Committee of Adjustment.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council accepts the resignation of Christopher M. Nutt from the Committee of Adjustment, and further that council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Now, any other new business or inquiries? Councillor Dubanow.
Just a quick comment. I am so glad to be back in chambers, Your Worship.
I noticed that happy dance when I came in. Thankfully, the cameras were on. Okay. If there are none, then that takes us to motions. And Councillor Noyes, you have the motion, the first motion under that heading.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow regarding the request that the town of Fort Erie seek a base supporter level living wage employee certification, whereas residents in Fort Erie are faced with the challenges of homelessness, a lack of affordable housing, and rising costs of living, and whereas many of our residents are finding it difficult to meet their essential and basic needs, and whereas part of the solution is to ensure that individuals are paid a living wage, and whereas a living wage is defined in the Guide to Becoming a Living Wage Employer as follows. A living wage is the hourly wage a worker needs to earn to cover their basic expenses and participate in their community. It is recalculated periodically to ensure that it accurately reflects changing living expenses. Living wage rates are based on the National Living Wage Framework. And whereas the definition of support and leader levels are also found in the Guide to Becoming a Living Wage Earner as follows. Supporter, all direct full-time employees are paid a living wage, committed to begin raising the pay of all direct part-time employees to the living wage rate. Leader, all direct full-time and part-time employees are paid a living wage, committed to including living wage in service contracts for externally contracted third-party employees that provide service on a regular basis. And whereas the anticipated cost for the year 2022 for certification at the support level, according to information provided by the Employment Services staff, is estimated to be an additional annualized $100,000 to the 2022 budget. Now therefore be it resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie apply to be a certified living wage employer at the support level by the end of the year 2021 and strive to achieve the leader level by 2023. And further, that the estimated costs associated with this certification for the supporter level be included in the 2022 budget.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes, you and I had had some discussions about this. My view being that this is a resolution that should be referred to the budget deliberations so that staff can prepare a report. Would you be interested in considering that?
Yes, Mayor Redekop, that makes good sense. I would have no problem with that.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, can I have Councillor Noyes move that referral? Sure. Yeah, okay, well, so then why don't we simply refer the whole thing to the budget deliberations? So this will be a motion to refer it. And then that will provide an opportunity for staff. So I would think the motion would be to refer to budget deliberations with staff to provide a report for consideration. Council. So, Councillor Noyes, you prepared to move that?
Yes, I am.
And a seconder, Councillor McDermott? Okay, so there's no question except a timing. And this is pretty clear, it'd be the budget deliberations. Our first budget deliberation, I think, is in November. All those in favor of the motion to refer? That is carried. So, Councillor Dubanow, I wonder if I could hand the chair to you. I have a couple of motions.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd be happy to, and go right ahead.
Hand the chair to you for this one, and then Councillor McDermott, I'm going to ask you maybe to take the chair for the next one. So for this one, I move, seconded by Councillor McDermott, Whereas access along the Lake Erie shoreline remains an important issue in the town of Fort Erie, and whereas the council for the town of Fort Erie has previously requested that the provincial government pass legislation permitting a rite of passage along the Lake Erie shoreline without success, now therefore be it resolved that council again requests the Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Doug Ford, to implement legislation that will provide individuals the right to pass peaceably along the Lake Erie shoreline and any other of the Great Lakes within 5 feet of the water's edge, respecting the rights of any private property owners across whose property the individuals may pass. And further, that the mayor is directed to send a letter to the Premier providing background on the matter and the rationale for this request. And further, that this resolution be circulated to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Region of Niagara, all municipalities in Niagara, the members of provincial parliament in Niagara, and the members of parliament in Niagara for their support. And if I might,
Please do, Your Worship.
I know that Councillor Butler, that we all received a letter directed to me, and Councillor Butler, you will be reading into the record a letter from one of the local residents who does not obviously support this resolution. Just wanted to remind members of council that on August the 27th, 2018, so about 3 years ago, we did pass a resolution with respect to rite of passage, and it did provide for individuals to walk along the Great Lakes shoreline. At that time, between the water's edge and the high water mark, this provides a better definition. It's 5 feet within the water, wherever that may be. It did indicate that this would permit the public access along the Great Lakes shoreline only via public land. So in order to get to the waterfront, you had to utilize public lands, such as parks, road allowances, or easements, and that this would prohibit the public from any activity on privately owned waterfront other than a right to walk along the shoreline. So I know that there are some individuals who own waterfront property who are concerned about this, but the vast majority of property owners that I've had discussions with over the years seem to be quite cognizant of the fact that people like to walk along the shoreline. And most of those individuals are quite content for that to happen as long as the individuals walking along the waterfront are respectful and don't cause damage. And so this would really accommodate those individuals. It does recognize the rights of the property owners, but it also recognizes that since the beginning of time, people have walked along the waterfront. Humans are drawn to water, and that's the reality. So I do acknowledge that there are some people who don't agree with this, and I'm quite content to have Councillor Butler as the resident, as the councillor for this resident, to read in the individual's objection. But I do hope council will continue to support this initiative.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Butler, do you want to proceed?
Sure, thank you. Mr. Redekop, as a lakefront resident of the town of Fort Erie, I am appalled about the motion you are putting forward tonight regarding a rite of passage along the Lake Erie shoreline. During a normal situation, this would be another example of how the town of Fort Erie selectively ignores the property rights of the minority lakefront owners and creates an environment of stress and confrontation for all people involved. This motion will only serve to increase trespassing and conflict for our family and friends on our property, not to mention cause stress on unwilling trespassers who otherwise would not do so. Would it not be for the neglect of the town of Fort Erie in communicating and delineating public from private shoreline property? Town of Fort Erie Waterfront Strategy Summary of Initiatives C. Provide information at each waterfront park and waterfront window with respect to site name, waterfront logo, the extent of public property, code of conduct, a map of the town's network of public land at the water's edge. We have been requesting appropriate mapping on town of Fort Erie signage since 2014, when we were threatened and assaulted by trespassers, which ended with police issuing a restraining order. Currently, the Bernard Beach sign only states, respect private property. Currently, we are not in a normal situation. We are in a pandemic. To date, 17,316 residents of the Niagara region have been infected with COVID, and 428 of these people have died. Only 74.5% of people in the Niagara region have been fully vaccinated, which sounds promising, but leaves approximately 120,000 people in the Niagara region unvaccinated. My son is included in this number as he is under 12 and unable to be vaccinated. These numbers suggest that this pandemic is far from over. There are restrictions in place throughout the city, region, and province to help keep people safe and allow the healthcare system to cope with this fourth wave. And you are tabling a motion which enables people to freely trespass on another property, disregarding any and all rights of the property owner. Personally, to have people walk across my property without any knowledge of who they are, their vaccination status, or whether they have a criminal record, and not be able to do anything about it is grossly unjust, not to mention the potential health risks these interactions may pose to my family. The town of Fort Erie has beautiful public beaches. Perhaps if you did not monetize these natural areas for profit and invite people from all areas, you would not need to have a rite of passage for locals funded by private citizens. Your motion is irresponsible and will cause more harm than good. Your timing for this motion is disrespectful to all private property owners and as well as people affected by the pandemic. As a local frontline emergency physician and property owner, I am astounded that you are even considering such a motion when there are much more important issues to address. Sincerely, Dr. Arnie Runge and Miss Sherry Ruston, 3217 Thunder Bay Road, Ridgeway, Ontario, L0S1N0.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Do any other members of council have any questions or comments? Yep, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Just a question or a comment, I guess it could be a question or a comment. The rite of passage does not include setting up a chair and staying a while, right? You're basically just walking along the water's edge up to 5 feet.
That's my understanding, Your Worship. That's your intent, right?
That's absolutely correct. And you know, with all due respect to Dr. Runge, and I will take the time to respond to him. I think that's appropriate. He's mischaracterized and perhaps misunderstands what the rite of passage is. It's something that successive members of provincial parliament in this area have supported of differing parties. And so, yes, it doesn't permit people to be disrespectful or to do anything other than walk along the shoreline, which they've been doing, as I said, I think, for a few centuries. Anyways.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Noyes, was there anything else? Okay.
No, there's nothing else.
Yeah, Councillor Zanko?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually just wanted to point out exactly what Councillor Noyes had mentioned, so I don't have anything further.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. Any other members of council have any questions? Comments? All right, so I'll call the question then. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Butler. Again, the mayor commented how difficult it is to keep track of all this. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make mention that that there have been individuals and groups that have tried to make this happen for a very long time, and I really do commend the mayor for stepping up to the plate and making this motion. I think it speaks volumes. All of us want to walk along the shoreline, and I think it is deservingly everybody's right to be able to enjoy that. It's peaceful, it's calming, and it gives you a great sense of enjoyment. So I will be supporting this motion.
Well said, Councillor Butler. Agreed. Is there anyone else? Questions, comments? Councillor McDermott.
Yeah, I just feel the same as the mayor does. I mean, I can't remember how many members of provincial parliament that have brought this forward. And, you know, to ignore the work of people in this community like Gary Scarrett, who brought Shore Walk about, would be kind of a nasty thing for us not to carry on this this motion here. Maybe this motion just might make it past the second or third reading, but we need a government who's interested in doing that. So it's come very close. It came close with MPP Crater, and it came very close with the MPP Gates. So it's not for any lack of trying. And, you know, when we were younger, we walked that beach. We didn't have too much trouble with any neighbors. I think you and I both walked that beach quite a bit from one end to the other. So not everybody feels this way. I think, you know, I don't think everybody's a nasty person that walks down the beach. I mean, we even swim probably in the water in front of them, right? So I think it's very important that we carry on this fight until the day comes that we actually get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott, and thank you, Your Worship, for bringing this on the floor. The sentiment expressed by Council is something I share. Any other members of Council have any questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous and carried, Your Worship, and I hand the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all members of council. Councillor McDermott, can I hand the chair to you then for the next motion, which relates to stormwater management ponds?
Okay, Your Worship.
Excuse me. So I move, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that staff be directed to review the town's policies regarding the construction, location, and maintenance of stormwater management ponds with a view to making these fundamental facilities not only functional for the growth of the municipality, but also attractive and useful as neighborhood amenities. And further, that staff provide a report to council as soon as practical for council to consider appropriate changes to those policies. And thanks to Councillor Noyes, who has been fulminating on this for many, many years. And I think all of us have wondered what we might be able to do to take advantage of some of these facilities that could be an attractive amenity. So hopefully council will support this.
Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with the mayor, and again, thank you to Councillor Noyes for also bringing this up over the years. As everyone in town, at least I would hope would be aware, we have a large stormwater management pond on Albany Street in Ward 2, just out on the edge of Garrison Village. And it's a beautiful area of town. I mean, you've got wooded area, you've got a very large pond, very nice. You know, it's, you know, kind of naturalized. There's a nice pathway through the area. I like riding my bike through there. And, you know, every now and then you see, you know, children playing in there. You know, even during the winter, they do various things. I think this is important because as our community grows, stormwater management is important. And we can use these facilities to enhance our neighborhoods as we build out. We can integrate them into the fabric of the neighborhood rather than being a utilitarian item that, you know, it just collects water to, you know, send it out to the lake slower, you know, based on the development rate. We can do some amazing stuff, some amazing urban design and natural design out of these. So I want to thank His Worship for bringing this up. I look forward to the report and implementing policies like this in the future to benefit our community. Thank you.
Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I'm obviously in support of this, was 14 years ago. And a good example is what was just done in Black Creek on River Trail. We now have a stormwater management pond there, and it's a lovely park-like setting. There's a path around it, and there's places to sit, and it's just a win-win situation. And I do think that this is definitely the right way to go. But my one question is this is on a go-forward basis. Is it going to affect the existing stormwater management ponds? And if it is, I would think that since the residents have lived there for a while, that we would need their input into whether they wanted any changes done.
Mr. Walsh?
What you're talking about, Councillor Noyes, is quite a public process for input, and I would caution you in this case, be careful what you wish for, because I have a suspicion of what the residents will ask, and I don't think we could meet that level of service, to be frank.
Councillor Noyes?
If I can respond, and Mr. Welch, I think I know I agree with you, and that's what one of my questions was. I think this is on a go-forward basis, right? It's not going to be necessarily affecting the existing stormwater management ponds, and if it is, if we do move it at a different time, then we would have some public input into the current stormwater management ponds.
Mr. Walsh?
We can do that, certainly, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions and comments. So it sounds like it's on a go-forward basis, but we have examples throughout town. In my ward, specifically, I know that there's other wards that suffer the same thing. Councillor Dubanow mentioned his ward has one, and I know that Councillor Zanko has one as well. But, people purchase their homes in good faith, and they're promised that these ponds are going to be maintained, and they aren't, and they become abandoned, and then they're overgrown. There is lots of algae that grows, and mosquitoes galore and other problems that happen. What's the plan to correct what has happened in the past and to ensure that these things don't happen in the future?
Mr. Walsh?
The promises that are made are put forward by the developer. Typically, I think Kira can vouch for me on this. Typically, a developer, while they retain control of a subdivision that's being built, they will maintain a stormwater pond to an almost park-like setting. Helps them sell houses, obviously. When we take over the stormwater management facility, generally our rule of thumb is we cut the grass or the vegetation every 3 weeks or so. We give it an annual inspection. With respect to algae, in a typical year with normal flows through a pond, there shouldn't be algae. Stormwater ponds that are designed properly and operate properly should not have a mosquito problem. Mosquitoes breed in warm puddles, not ponds. So we've had a funny year for weather. Up until July 17th, it was very dry around here. July 17th, we had a bad storm. We went hot and dry for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then we had a bad storm. So it's been funny weather and untypical.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I just wonder if we could find out what we're going to do currently for, the Ridgeway pond, the Crescent Park one, the one in Ward 2 as well, because they're all experiencing problems and nothing has been done. So I would hesitate to support this motion, knowing that things haven't been corrected in the past. How are we going to ensure that things will be corrected in the future?
Mr. Walsh? Any comments?
I'll disagree with Councillor Butler that nothing's been done. How do we correct it in the future? We keep maintaining our current practices of inspection and taking action when necessary.
Councillor Butler?
I thank you, Mr. Chair. I just doesn't answer my question, and with respect to the current situation of the ponds and how we're going to correct that. And I am hesitant. While I'm kind of torn here because I do support the mayor and what he's trying to accomplish. I get it, but I haven't seen any progress with the current state of ponds.
before I go to Councillor
think the
Lubberts,
mayor
do
would
you
like
want to
to
answer
count.
that question?
Yeah, I think it's just germane to Councillor
go
Butler's
ahead.
comments, if Councillor Lubberts is okay. Yeah, my view is that the report isn't just on a go-forward basis. I mean, it does talk about maintenance, and I think we need to look at those policies. So, you know, there will be undoubtedly some financial aspects to this, but, you know, to me, some of these ponds, I think there's more that we could do. We'd have to look at the levels of service. Maybe it's going to cost more money. We have to determine whether we're prepared to spend money on some of these ponds or not. And so I would hope that the report will cover not only going forward, but also take a look at what the current maintenance standards are, and maybe identify where we've got the stormwater management ponds, what the possibilities and potential is, and then go from there. I mean, the stormwater management pond that Councillor Dubanow referenced, the one on Albany, to me, that has fantastic potential to be a park. It should be no different than what's in Black Creek, and that is undoubtedly a neighborhood amenity. And so that does cost money, though, and so if there's going to be a change in level of service, we have to determine whether or not we're prepared to go that route. And so I hear what the Director of Infrastructure Services says about the weather and the current level of service. I hear what some of the residents and even some of the councillors are saying in terms of how we're managing some of these ponds. So I think we just need to get a report that will provide us with a significant background that we can then consider what we want to do and how we want to take advantage of these facilities that exist and the ones that may be coming down the line. I hope that somewhat helps, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Your Worship. I would be interested to see what that report would say with respect to how we fix the current situation and move forward, and what that cost would entail. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to support the motion, and I'm just hoping that staff can also take a look at not just the policies on maintenance and everything, but give us an update on what the status is on some of these ponds. If I remember correctly, a while back, this was brought up with the stormwater management pond in Ridgeway by the lake. And I think we're still waiting for the developer to move forward with an assumption bylaw for us to assume the pond. So we don't even own it, but we're looked at as the party that's responsible for the maintenance of it, and I'm not sure that we are yet. So hopefully we can get that as well, that we get the status of what the ponds are, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but if I remember a few years back, our former director of planning indicated that the stormwater management pond at Ridgeway by the lake was no longer a stormwater management pond. It was designated something else. Now, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, that's what he told us. So now what is the status? What is that pond all about? And that pond in particular needs a lot of maintenance now before we assume it, because it has been, the grounds around it have eroded. Some of the bigger rocks that were there look to me like they're unstable and unsafe. And so hopefully this report addresses all of the issues around it, not just policies and maintenance as far as the town goes, but we need to know the status of it. And we need to maybe enforce some more rules to the developers that they need to maintain these ponds even before we assume them. That's my comment.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. Mr. Walsh, noted on all that? You've got all that?
Certainly, Councillor.
Okay, and what is that? So what is the status for the Ridgeway Pond, by the way?
I'll defer to Kira Dolch on this.
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. In terms of the Ridgeway by the Lake Pond, it is an actual stormwater management facility. Just to clear up any confusion there, it is an actual facility. I'd have to check whether or not we've assumed it at this point or not. But we can definitely provide a list of those ponds that are still under developers' control and those that are under the town's control.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, just one quick question or comment, Mr. Chair, and just going back to the Ridgeway by the Lake Stormwater Management Pond, it's actually a real cool facility because there's almost like a concrete platform that's set up going into the pond itself, and you see a lot of people out there bird watching and doing other things. You know, I again ride my bike in through there, and it's got a hill that you pedal up, and you see people out there, and they enjoy it. It's very nice. Like it's almost like a park-like setting. So I understand the maintenance concerns. I have a fenced-off stormwater management pond. Unfortunately, in my neighborhood, it serves no purpose other than holding water. So it's not anything that we can use or enjoy in the neighborhood. But in particular, going forward, as we have new plans of subdivision come forward and we start forming these neighborhoods together and connecting them together, I hope we see more of, you know, those platforms going out there. So, you know, you can enjoy bird watching, you know, even park amenities, even simple things like trash cans to you know, have the ability for people to dispose of even, you know, what's left over from their dog rather than leaving it there. We need to integrate these as part of the neighborhoods rather than just be utilitarian. So I went on longer than I wanted to, Mr. Chair, but I will happily be supporting this. I look forward to the report. Thank you.
Anything further from anybody? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. That takes us to notice of motion. Councillor Butler, did you want to proceed with a motion?
I was going to, but no, it would be defeated in the long run anyway, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so let's wait and see what transpires out of our efforts with CNP.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, that takes us then to consideration of bylaws, and we have a number that Councillor Dubanow has declared a pecuniary interest with respect to, and those are 111, 112, and 114. Is that correct?
That is, Your Worship.
Okay. Are there any other bylaws that anyone wishes removed from the package? If not, Councillor Lubberts, could you do first and second reading for the amended bylaw package, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That the bylaw package containing bylaw 106-2021 to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement with 828421 Ontario Inc., Wilson, Ribeiro, Hazelwood Subdivision, 107-2021 to authorize the execution of an amending subdivision agreement with Mars Homes, Crystal Beach Inc., Dan Gabriel Beach Walk Subdivision, 108-2021 to authorize the entry into an agreement to supplement the right of reconveyance agreement with 2713166 Ontario Inc., 4152 Erie Road. Bylaw 109-2021 to authorize the entry into an agreement of purchase and sale with Her Majesty the Queen in the right of the Province of Ontario, represented by the Ministry of Transportation, for the purchase of PIN number 64220-0292, Queen Elizabeth Way and Concession Road. 110-2021 to assume primary services in the Black Creek Signature Subdivision, Phase 1. 113-2021 to amend zoning bylaw number 12990-246 and 248 Henrietta Street. 114-2021 being a bylaw to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M 488 from part lot control, Block 42 Viking Street, Peacebridge Village subdivision, Ashton Homes.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, your worship,
No,
I,
not 114. Go
114.
113 to 115.
115, I'm sorry. Yeah, 115, 2021 being a bylaw to exempt certain lots from part lot control, lots 23 and 24, 23, 24, and 25, Plan 395, 146 Hahn Road, Bojan Pavlovic, and Dragana, Rakovac, Pavlovic, Bylaw 116, 2021 to amend Business Licensing Bylaw 217-05 as amended, short-term rentals, Schedule 13. Bylaw 117-2021 to appoint Rachel Monroe as temporary acting deputy clerk in the absence of the clerk. And Bylaw 118-2021 to authorize the applications for the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes levied for the years 2018, 2019, and 2020 as given first and second reading.
All those in favor? And opposed? That bylaw package as amended is on the floor for any questions or comments. There being none, then...
Oh, Mayor Redekop.
I'm sorry, Councillor Lubberts.
Yeah, just one question. Previously, we've agreed that we would always include the primaries when it comes to Ontario numbered companies.
Yes.
And 108, 2021, it doesn't give the primary. And I'm wondering if we have that here available tonight.
I'm sure that we do. Ms. Dolch, do you know, would you be the proper person to ask for the owner of the property in Crystal Beach where we're extending the right to reconveyance? You know who the principal behind the numbered corporation is?
Yes, Your Worship, I can get that information. I do have their name, if you just bear with me a moment.
You're quite correct on that, Councillor Lubberts, because otherwise it could be, in this case, I don't think there would be any.
Yeah, I don't think there's a conflict.
However,
but,
that is what we have agreed to.
if we don't have it tonight, can we make the correction in the minutes so that the name is there?
I do have the owner's name is Lixia Lin.
What is it again?
Lixia Lin.
Okay.
Okay.
Perhaps that can be reflected in the minutes.
Yeah,
Madam
okay,
Clerk.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we go to third and final reading? If not, then Councillor McDermott, third and final reading for the amended bylaw package, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaws 106-2021, 107-2021, 108-2021, 109-2021, 110-2021, 113-2021, 115-2021, 116-2021, 117-2021, 118-2021 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Thank you. Good catch, Councillor McDermott. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the bylaws in the amended package? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So Councillor Lubberts, can I go back to you for first and second reading for bylaws 111, 112, and 114, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott that the bylaw package containing bylaw 111-2021 to assume primary services in Spears Estate Subdivision Phase 1, bylaw 112-2021 to assume secondary services in Spears Estate subdivision Phase 1. And bylaw 114/2021 being a bylaw to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M 488 from part lot control, Block 42 Viking Street, Peacebridge Village subdivision, Ashton Homes, Western Limited, Aldo, Ursillo. Is given first and second reading.
Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Those bylaws are on the floor for any questions or comments. There being none, Councillor McDermott, can I go back to you for third and final reading for those three bylaws, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaws 111/2021, 112/2021, and 114/21 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Lubberts, back to you for bylaw number 119, the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott. That bylaw number 119/2021 to confirm the actions of council at its council meeting held on September 20, 2021 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Butler, you have the resolution for third and final reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that bylaw number 119-2021 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings that anyone wishes to announce? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I actually have a few of them. So tomorrow at 4 p.m., the Fort Erie Public Library Board will be holding a meeting. That will be in person in the boardroom at the library. And I believe we also have a Healthcare Services Committee at 5 o'clock, although I can't recall if that's being done here at Town Hall or over Zoom. I'm going to be attending over Zoom if that option is available.
I have conference room 1 Town Hall, but also, yeah, I have conference room Town Hall.
Okay. I'm trying to juggle the two meetings, so Zoom might be easier for me. And also the following week on, September 29th, we have a Community Gaming Development Corporation Board of Directors meeting. That's at 5:30, and that will be held at the Fort Erie Library.
Okay, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. We have a Infrastructure Services Business Subcommittee on Wednesday, the 29th at 3 p.m.
Any other meetings? Okay.
Mayor, if I might,
Yes.
Councillor Noyes, we've moved that meeting forward one day. It's on the 28th at 3 p.m.
Okay, I have both on mine. I thought we moved it back.
Yeah, so that's the 28th, and then I see that there's on the 29th, there's a Planning and Development Services meeting also. And that's at the same time as your Gaming Corporation meeting. Councillor Dubanow? How do you do that? Just have various computers. Okay, if there aren't any others, before we adjourn, I just want to say how enjoyable it's been to see real live human beings in this chamber for the first time since March the 23rd. Yeah. So, hopefully we'll all be able to come here at some point in the future. But it was nice to even see all of you, including those of you who are on Zoom, because we can't all get into this room. All right, Councillor Dubanow.
Yes,
The
Your
final
Worship.
resolution of the evening.
Absolutely. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council adjourns at 8:06 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on October 25th, 2021.
All those in favor? I'm opposed, I want to stay.
Don't say that.
I'm in support. Thank you, everyone. It's been really cool.